Okay, I think we can start. And while I introduce the session, probably more participants will join us. So good afternoon. And my name is Ingrid Cáceres. I work at University of Alcalá, and I am specialized in German philology and translation studies. Welcome to the Europe webinar series Spotlight on Education. This is 1 hour to discuss one topic with two partners from two different disciplines. Today, we have Isabel Pérez Cano from University of Hamburg and Maria Johansson from University of Lund. And we will explore about how to teach and engage with local contexts. We will recognize how our closest environment can have an impact on us, and our speakers will demonstrate the versatility of using the exploration of local contexts as a teaching tool. So I will introduce very briefly our two colleagues. I will start with Isabel, who is a lecturer at the Institute of Romance Languages at the University of Hamburg. She specializes in teaching Spanish as a foreign language, and she has extensive experience in teaching, teacher training, the development of teaching materials and research, and she holds a master's degree in neuropsychology and education, as well as degrees in English language and literature and in teaching foreign languages to adults. And our colleague Maria Johansson is professor in environmental psychology at the Department of Architecture and Built Environment at the Lund University in Sweden. And she has a background in psychology, but mostly work in multidisciplinary research projects. Her research and teaching explore the interplay between humans and their environments from an individual perspective, with a special focus on how experiences of built and natural settings contribute to psychological well-being. So thank you very much for being here today. And to our participants, please make sure that you write your questions on the chat, because at the end of the presentations, we will start with the debate. So now, Isabel, the floor is yours, and you can start with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my presentation. And okay. So I suppose you all see my presentation. Okay, thank you. So, welcome everybody, and again, many thanks to University of Lund and University of Alcalá for this panel, for giving us the opportunity to meet in this panel. Hello, Maria, very nice to be together with you here. I'm going to present in this panel, in this talk, an ongoing educational experience in which we explore the use of public space, of the local context in foreign language teaching. It is a master translation course, and we work with linguistic landscapes. And linguistic landscapes are semiotic science in the public space. And with this linguistic landscape, we gather teaching and learning materials. And when talking with Maria to find practices or commonalities in our two very different academic fields, we realized that place-based education provides an approach for our practices, and then we find as well another point of intersection, and is the role we need for both lecturer and students to adapt when working with active methodologies such as place-based education. Maria will be talking more in deep about that, and the constructivist approaches that are typical in foreign language education, such as text-based approach, project-based approach. And I'm going to start now presenting my educational experience. It is informed by the place-based approach, as I told before, because we were collecting some kind of linguistic landscape. The students needed to explore their local context to look for the materials that we will use in the course. And then we can argue as well that my course was a kind of project-based course, because we have a product, we have a corpus. This corpus, this linguistic landscape corpus, was the content. The students needed to create the content of the course, or co-create the content of the course with this linguistic landscape that they were collecting in their environment. And but that wasn't enough. I mean, there wasn't enough just to have this little project. The important thing was this engaging with the environment. I have now this quotation from Leo van Leer, someone who was working with semiotics and ecology, and he was talking about giving students affordances in a way that is understood, meaningful ways of relating to environment through perception in action. And this is actually what it is, my approach, or what my takings from place-based education, to focus on the perception in action in the analog world. And for those approaches, if we are talking about the approaches like place-based approach, or we are talking about experiential learning and so on, all these constructivist approaches needed a new role, as I said before, the lecturer as facilitator and also the student as partner. I will start briefly with the student as partner, because it is a student is not my point. My point is talking about lecturer as facilitator. And in many disciplines, there are a lot of efforts to change the role, the duties, the tasks of the students. And you can see it as a partner, or you can see it as in foreign language education as an agent, as a social agent. Wherever approach, they are focusing on changing the duties, the task, and the roles. And with that, I'm going to explain a little bit what I understand as what is a facilitator. Maria also works with this word facilitator, but we come from different disciplines. And in foreign language education, a facilitator is more than a project manager. Facilitator is a fuzzy concept, can be a project manager, can be a mediator. The project manager is someone who says what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and then you let people doing it. But to be also an effective facilitator, you have to create a safe space for students, because you need to build trust. You have to give appreciative feedback. You have to pay a lot of attention of the undercurrents, interpersonal undercurrents in the group, to be able to work with these active methodologies. And whereas project manager is very found in or studied in organizational psychology, my approach to facilitation is more of that of humanistic psychology, like Rogers. So it is about creating as a third space. And for that, as a lecturer or as a professor or teacher, we need to have special personal traits, or we need to develop the skills to be able to cope with uncertainty, when we don't control everything that happens in a course, when you don't bring to your course your own material, but students make the materials. Like in my case, you have to have a lot of tolerance to uncertainty, because you don't know what's going to happen. You can have an idea, but you don't know what to happen. In research, people talk about, or it is spoke about, humility in the way of academic humility or cognitive humility, realizing that as a facilitator, we are not the center of the knowledge, and we don't know everything, and we also make errors. And of course, empathy, but I'm not going to talk about this empathy trait or skill, because we all know what it is about. So the thing is that to change from a lecture, and now we see it with this picture here, based on Adrian Underhill, to be a lecturer, you have, or to be a facilitator, it is like a personal development. So it is personal development process also for us. All of us are expert in the fields, in our fields. Most of us are expert in didactic and methodology, so we are teachers. But the facilitator, in the words of Adrian Underhill, is someone who generates a psychological climate conducive to high quality learning. What I called before the third space, the space in which people feel safe. And with this little beginning, I'm going to present my educational experience at the University of Hamburg in the framework of our projects working with linguistic landscape. And the course is a translation course with the name Translation, the Communicative Equivalence, but we are not a translator school, so we use translation as a pedagogical tool. And with this name, I saw it was the perfect blank canvas to experiment and to update the methodological design of the course, because we all have a huge disruptor in all academic fields, and it is artificial intelligence, but it is the indiscriminate use of artificial intelligence. And if you're working with languages in translation studies, in philology, in such a course like us in the Department of Teaching Spanish as a Foreign Language, we need to find alternatives for these challenges, this disruption. So before I was on elaborating the idea or the framework of the course, I have two objectives I wanted to reach. It was engagement of the students with the learning content, less artificial intelligence and more natural intelligence. And I wanted them to be aware of their local context, of their analog environment, as I put here. And what I did was some small changes because we are in foreign language education, I needed a language communicative approach and also a tool. So we went from translation, or I went from translation to mediation. And then I went from text-based input for translation to multilateralism input as the one that a linguistic landscape provides. And I also, related to that, I went from lecture selected materials to let students build the corpus for the context of our course, and also the shift from lecture to facilitator. So for all of those who doesn't work in education or in foreign language education, I want to explain that mediation is I would rather say it is the hot thing right now, since the Common European Reference Framework, the volume appeared in 2020, and everybody is talking about mediation as a communicative language activity and a strategy, but also as an approach to linguistic education. That means that we not only mediate, or not only translate the linguistic input, but also we have to mediate, we have to translate in a way the sociological, the political, and the cultural setting in which this linguistic item, in which this communication is made. So that's the shift from only translating the words to translating everything, also what's behind the words and around the words, around the message. And okay, the small feedback, or the small part from place-based education is like, I wanted to get the student gather their own materials. So the topics and the materials were centered in their interest, and as a way to cater for a student agency. So now I'll show you the corpus, or some ideas, or the corpus of the students, what the student collected in Hamburg and Greater Hamburg. So we have a corpus of 43 artifacts, different arts of linguistic landscape, and we also have no off-limits topics, because I understand myself as a facilitator. I tried to create a space in which students were very safe to bring everything they wanted, or they consider to be important in their life. So we didn't have no off-limits topics. So most of the artifacts dealt with international tensions, feminism, pro-democracy against fascism, and also they were taken because linguistic landscape are semiotic science in the public space, and the public space is both outdoors and indoors, and the artifacts were made at a university compound, cafe and bars, sport facilities, parks, and public transportation, places where students move around. And once we have this corpus, I've got some other examples from this corpus. When we have this corpus, we didn't work with all of these linguistic landscapes, but just with selected ones, but they were selected by the students. I asked students to bring 3 artifacts of linguistic landscape, and then they decide with which one they wanted to work with. And what we did with this educational, with this corpus, how we use it. Students were co-constructing the content of the course. One of the pieces of work was the written guide for all university participants of our project. And then we work also doing linguistic and sociocultural mediation, German, Spanish. We use it also artificial intelligence, and we use it, the tool of user judgment, to evaluate what artificial intelligence was throwing us in a way. So that was the part of the mediation. And for foreign language teacher or a Spanish language teacher, they may ask, okay, where is the intakes, or where is the Spanish or the linguistic part? All of the content we were producing in our classes then took us to, grammatically speaking, to some important points for accuracy in and language mastery, like the presence or absence of articles, particularly in relation to the subject of a sentence, how to express impersonality, so passive voice, say impersonal, and so on. So the educational use of the corpus the student brought to the classroom make it possible, or made it possible to cater for all, or to cover all objectives of our module, and also of our course. And I show you in the last minutes the roadmap of this educational experience. We were talking before how to be, or like you are a project manager when you are dealing with this kind of active methodologies. So it is very important to have a clear roadmap. And as you see, the first weeks, the weeks from 1 to 4, students needed to gather the linguistic landscape. And in these 4 sessions, I was a lecturer, and I was a teacher, and I was a project manager, because I was providing them with guidelines, deadlines. I was teaching them what I wanted them to do later on. In the weeks 5 to 12 and 6 to 12, then students took over, and then we went to the last week, and we have an examination. Well, with that, I want to finish my talk, and I thank you very much. I don't know if I'm very over the time or just in time. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isabel. The timing was perfect, and thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. It was very interesting. So please, participants, do not forget to write your questions in the chat, on the chat. And now I go over to Maria, and please, you can share now your presentation, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you very much. I hope to be able to continue from Isabel's really interesting talk here with some examples of how we developed a course with a place-based perspective in mind. I hope you see my screen correctly now. Perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to have this talk. I'm presenting it on behalf not only of myself, but also a team of teachers that had opportunity to develop an EU-GLOW course during 1 year's time. And we are now actually about to launch this course. And what I would like to do today is to introduce you to our thoughts and ideas for how we're gonna work with the course with students during the autumn. And we've chosen to call it Designing Place-Based Education for Online Teaching, because this is a course that will go throughout the EU-GLOW universities. I think it's possible to apply soon. And a challenge here has been to see how we actually can integrate the place-based aspect in the online component or format of this course. I won't speak so much about the online format today, but rather focus on the design of the place-based component. So the course that we are launching is Healthy Urban Living in the Context of Changing Environmental Conditions. This is a course that is multidisciplinary, where we bridge between physical health, public health, environmental psychology, and ecology. So what we really aim to do here is to address human physical and psychological health in the local space and make that as a bridge to the global environmental challenges, and to increase the understanding of how urban design actually can support physical activity and recreation, but also psychological well-being in the time when we're facing climate change and also biodiversity decline. And as I mentioned, we had opportunity to develop it within the EU-GLOW. Great. So this is what we are addressing. This is actually from a residential area in the city of Malmö in the very south of Sweden. It is an area that was built like 25 years ago with very clear environmental intentions. And this is the type of environments that we would like our students to take as a starting point for their understanding on how their local environment may matter to the global environmental challenges. So the course is structured around 4 main modules, where we have a first module that is the introduction to our interdisciplinary approach. And then we move towards physical health and the benefits of the urban environments that are designed with physical activity in mind. We move towards the more psychological well-being and health aspect, meaning that it's not only a matter of how the environment is designed, but also how people experiences this environment. And finally, we can look into the nature-based solutions that are possible to do in the urban environments to also see how we can strengthen biodiversity and the urban ecosystems. And I introduced this because this is the key format for our place-based education that we try to make use of the students' own places throughout the course. So maybe repeating a bit what Isabel already mentioned here, but the idea behind the place-based education is that we want the students to engage with our own local environment. And very important in our context when we will meet the students online is that this is also an opportunity to share different local experiences and still within some boundaries. What we believe, especially for the online format, is that this could help provide very authentic and meaningful learning experiences for the students, that they have their own physical environment to relate to, but they will also get a catalogue of the other students' local environments. And also actually being out there in the real world, that involves multiple learning dimensions that go beyond just the facts, and also very much address the feelings here. So we see as place as a connection between a very experiential learning approach and a place-based education. So this is what we have in mind, students being out in their own residential or local environments, in a way exploring the green spaces that are in there, and what are the qualities and opportunities of these environments, and how can they, from their different disciplinary backgrounds, contribute to strengthen such content in their local environment. So, as I mentioned, we very much put the local place in the center for the course, but as we have a multidisciplinary group of students that also would come from different local contexts, we try to work to set some criteria to actually being able to compare those aspects we would like the students to learn about throughout the course. That means that we set some physical criteria in terms of size, that it should be in an urban environment, that there should be some defined boundaries, and also some kind of availability of greenery, but also an environment that provides some variation. And also thinking both about the role of these spaces in daytime and nighttime to also have access to some lighting. But there are also some social dimensions that we try to take into account. It should be a place that people actually have the opportunity to regularly visit. So it is something that has a meaning to local residents. And also a place that is known to the student, so the student can relate to it. And also we need to think about ease of access and a safe and secure environment, because this is also the students' work environment. And we are actually asking the students to repeatedly return to these places throughout the course. So this is actually the first assignment that we introduce the students to. And the objective here is to link the global with the local and place-based perspectives, and actually ask the students to start to reflect on how the chosen location is exposed to issues related to global change. So climate, biodiversity loss, urbanization, and etc. So then moving to the more specific place-based assignment, our second assignment here, after having chosen the specific location and identified and described the place, is to focus on the physical activity and health aspect. Here it's very much about using existing tools from public health and physical health education to identify certain structures that could support physical activity. So actually train the student's eye to identify such features in their own local environment. In the following assignment, we work with the environmental psychology approach, and that is for the students to apply different so-called observer-based environmental assessments tools. And that is experiences that we systematically can assess and also communicate with people about their environmental experiences, and that we know that they would be linked to psychological health. And the fourth and final assignment for the different topic-related modules is the biodiversity assessment. So again, going out and investigating this specific area, but this time looking beyond human health. The very final assignment is to build a report, and actually a report that should be communicable and being able to provide input to the local context. And here the idea is for the students, based on this local place, to connect their experiences and their results throughout the different assignments, to make a combined assessment and also be able to provide some guidelines or ideas for solutions that could improve multiple values for this place to really strengthen it as an urban public space. So here comes the part with also directly engaging and interacting with the local community as such. And I want to draw attention to that we, for this course, has chosen quite structured way for the students to investigate a local place. This could be done when you're visiting in a very open-minded way and sort of just notifying, see what the environment affords, as Isabel referred to. In our context, we rely on the available methods within our disciplines as a learning tool for the students to systematically look at a known place. But of course, this could be complemented with speaking to people, spending time in the place, also having their own observations along the way. So what we are doing here is that we see that a place-based approach actually serves to bridge in this online teaching format between the students and also our teachers' very different disciplinary boundaries, to be a space where we can allow for different cultural differences that can be discussed, and also spatial differences, and address the variation in cases and also therefore the very different experiences. So as I mentioned, we are a teacher team working with this, and equally important as reflecting on how we want to develop the course and engage the students is, of course, the approach we take. And we sort of adhere to an experimental learning approach, but also more of an updated and modern version that realized that being out in places would provide a very contextually rich experience. And each place has its own history, culture, and so forth. And also, we would like to strengthen the students' critical reflective observation, but having them critical analyzing their local space through the tools that we are posting, and questioning the assumptions and integrating multiple perspectives. What we believe with this approach, with working in the places, is that we in this way could make the connection between the very contextual approach and also a more abstract conceptualization of the knowledge in the engagement with the other students. So again, taking this role as a facilitator, and also being pragmatic, allowing for experimentation and for students to look into different problem-solving strategies and decision-making processes when they interact with our own real-world challenges. So we find that we really need to be curators of learning environments, that our important role is to be the connector between theory and practice, that we could help through gaining these experiences and getting the results to be a promoter of reflective thinking about how this theory and practice is used. And as mentioned, being a facilitator for an effective communication, not only between students themselves with their diverse backgrounds and as teachers, but also with the local community. And our ideas, how we gonna try to implement this, at least during the autumn, is that we have prepared these criteria actually to be met in the choice of the local cases. So we do curate this place-based learning experience. Also, we switch between some lectures and these concrete experiences and the literature. So we try to be the connectors in this sense. And also in the assignments, we expect to have not only the discussions, but also written reports to give an opportunity for students to train, to reflect on what they gained from these place-based experiences. And to support effective communication in the seminars, in the assignments throughout the course. So we're looking very much forward to implement the course and trying out our ideas in practice. And yeah, also to share these experiences with the local community. And with that, I would like to finish my presentation and thank you so much for your attention. And I look forward to discuss more with you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It was a very interesting approach and very complementary to that what Isabel presented. So I think we have enough material for the discussion. I'm having a look at the chat, so maybe there is a question. If not, there is still time to write something, and I will make in the meantime a few questions. The first one is for Isabel. Could you explain a little bit more about the assessment, what the assessment does consists of in your course? And for Maria, the question is, how can this place-based teaching contribute to local urban development? You have shown us at the end an example about this policy, but maybe you could give us a very special example to clarify this item. Thank you.
Okay, then I will start with your answering your question. Yes. Well, I'm not going to project again my PowerPoint, but we've seen that we've got different steps or different yeah, let's call it steps in the course. So we've got up to the fourth week, students start collecting what happens in the classroom in the form of a protocol, because there is a lot of uncertainty with the materials that we are creating. We are just working with the linguistic landscape that someone decided to bring, not decided, have to bring that day. And that was, we need to have someone doing a protocol. So this protocol is both an assessment tool and also a way to create a corpus of written materials to prepare students also for the written examination at the end of the semester. So one tool was this protocol that students were writing at the week fifth, the fifth week, and up the sixth week, students started presenting their linguistic landscape. They started presenting orally based on our document from our project. They started presenting one artifact of their linguistic landscape. That is also another tool, another part of the assessment. And at the very end of the course, we have a written examination. This written examination was 60% of the overall notes, and the protocol and the presentation were 20% each. The important thing, or what is interesting to know, is that the written examination was written in pairs or even in a threesome. We were working in a very we were working in pairs, in groups, the whole course. That was the reason why at the very end I decided to make a written examination a very traditional tool, but that I needed to know because it was in the description of my course. But I decided to do it in the form of collaborative work. The results were excellent, and we didn't need to have dictionaries and so on, because there were two minds working together. And the other thing, I was trying to mix students which mother tongue was Spanish, or that they were Spanish as a heritage language, with students that were learners of Spanish. So these teams were also mixed in their language capacities. So we have these three assessment tools to gather the complete mark at the end of the semester or at the end of the course.
Oh, that sounds a very innovative system, and I can imagine that the students were very motivated by this course. And
they were very motivated. Yes, that was also one of the important aspects. Also, the motivation, and also the student agency, and all these kind of psychological factors.
I wonder if Maria's students were also so motivated, or maybe, well, to come again with the question I asked before about how they can contribute to the local environment. This must be must be very good for them, I think.
We hope so. As we haven't run this course yet, I don't exactly know, but we have tried similar approaches in previous courses. And at least what we hope for is that having students analyzing their local spaces so closely, and also having the opportunity to provide some ideas to the local councils, for example, that could spur interest or ideas for how the local environment could change. What we see is, if you're coming in and if you have a background in health, for example, start to speak with urban planners, for example, in how you would plan a public space, how greenery and could be set up to maybe facilitate some physical activity and so forth. On the other hand, if you're coming from an urban planning or ecology side, you might have a lot of knowledge on the greenery as such, but maybe not in relation to people's behavior or physical activity, or how a place could be designed to be more mentally restorative, for example. And this is something, of course, that can be communicated both in written, but we also hope that the course would attract students coming maybe more from a planning, design, architecture perspectives, and that also would bring with them tools to come with ideas what it could look like and how it could be designed. I think you're muted, Ingrid, so.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you very much, Maria. It was very clear, your explanation. We have still a few minutes left, so I'm going to make two more questions. The first one is for Isabel again. You have you talked about 3 items to assess students, but how do you assess language proficiency? Because this is a very special point within the whole topic of the linguistic landscapes. And the other question, so you can think about it, Maria, is how much should a teacher structure? This is about how much should it structure students' place-based experiences? How much room is there for improvisation, if I can say. So, Isabel, if you may start.
Yes, thanks for the question. Is very interesting. Someone asked that question in the in the chat, because that means that we have some foreign language teachers around, or foreign language educators. Language accuracy or grammatically accuracy. Actually, it was not the whole point of focusing on language accuracy. Of course, the points I mentioned before, they were reiterative, popping up through the linguistic mediation process, like using passive voice, or using subject without determination. I mean, that's very focused on Spanish as foreign language for German students. No, that's why I don't want to get very in the depth, because probably it's not interesting for everybody. But those recurrent aspects, they play a role in the correction mark. But actually, it was more interesting, or the higher percent in the note was about mediating the content, mediating the socio-cultural differences of the linguistic landscape. Linguistic landscape was also a part of the examination.
Thank you
So it
very
was
much. Thank you very much,
okay.
Isabel. I think it was very clear, your answer, and
Okay.
and now I think Maria can answer to the other question.
Yeah, and what I heard is like a discussion on how structured the teaching should be in a place-based approach, because I think that's really interesting, that I really would like to discuss with this audience as well, because it's something that we struggle a bit with within our teacher team. On the one hand, actually, places could be very different. They would need to be approached maybe in different ways depending on the local culture and context. And on the other hand, in this very specific situation, we were also limited by our online approach. And I would say that has shaped our way of having a very structured course with a number of assignments that is very aligned and precise in a way. And I could also see other ways of doing it, especially if you would work on site together with students at campus, for example. And then there you could open for more freely explore and collect this information and gather around, because then I would say that students could have a very similar frame of reference in their analysis. So I think it's a very interesting discussion to have in this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, and it connects with what Isabel talked about before, that if you work with place-based education, you have to make room for uncertainty. Like in this case, if you go On site, you can't really prepare everything, and you have to be open, and you have to show this humility to be prepared that you can't have an answer for everything. And maybe, and probably, students surprise us quite often with their findings and with their proposals. So I think there is a big connection about you both talked about. Um, I don't know if you want to add something else.
I would like to add something to Maria or to you about what you have already said about that you think that your assignment is like you are closing very much the framework, but we mustn't forget that students are not used to work in that way. So going back to this idea from the project manager who teach how to do things. So it is also a point we have to, sometimes our role is to define very clear what we want, because they have to learn how to do it. They have to learn these new procedures. So I think it's also it's a very good way to start your future courses and to see how it works also for you. If you restrain so much, or you can open it, because students are how you say, they've got enough experience to work that way.
Yeah, thank you. And that's exactly how we are thinking as well, that even if you're in this online format and you spend time in very different parts of Europe and elsewhere, also meaning that could we create some safe space within that you know what you will do when you get to this place. So something to hold in your hand when you're meeting actors. Yeah.
So thank you very much again. And I think we have just come to the end of this session. And I would just like to say for ending that this place-based education and exploring the local context seems to have a lot of benefits, both for teachers and students, because it enhances critical thinking, and it helps students and teachers to connect with the topics, with the main topics we have to deal with nowadays in our world. So I think we can stop here, and I just want to say to the participants that you will receive an email with a link to more information. This seminar has been recorded and will be available on the UGLO YouTube, and the webinar series will continue. So stay tuned for what's next from UGLO. You can see it in our website. And thank you very much again for joining all of us. Thank you very much, especially to Isabel, to Maria, to Tulia, for your very insightful presentations. It was really very interesting, and I hope to meet you again maybe in another seminar, probably Isabel in Alcalá de Henares. We will hold a very big conference about pedagogical innovation at the university, so hopefully we will meet there, and maybe some of the participants too. So thank you very much again, and see you in the next webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you very much
Thank
also
you.
for you, and thank you everybody. Bye bye.